Good afternoon. It is 12:30 on your Monday. I'm Julie Broughton. This is Take 6. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope your day is going well so far. This is when we get to hang out a little bit outside of our traditional newscast time and have some more in-depth conversations that we typically don't have the time for during our actual newscasts. And of course, as I'm sure you've heard, because we've been talking about it for what feels like years now, tomorrow is Election Day. It is finally here. Of course, this is a big one. Lots of important things on the ballot. So to talk more about that is UCF professor and News 6 political analyst, Dr. Jim Clark. Jim, it's the season when we get to spend so much time with you. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, it seems every 4 years. And, we've been talking about this election for 4 years now, Julie,
I know. Can you
on
believe it's here?
multiple newscasts. And here it finally is.
Yeah, and so a lot to talk about. First of all, you will be with us tomorrow throughout the duration, watching those returns come in, analyzing everything. What are you going to be watching as we move through the evening hours? What does take us into the mind of Dr. Jim Clark, the political analyst, and what will you be
I,
looking
th-
for?
I think we're going to be looking initially at three states: Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan. Those are all toss up states, and they are all in the Eastern time zone. So they're going to begin giving us results shortly after 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So we're going to have an early indication. If somehow Vice President Harris carries all three, that's going to indicate a great night for her. If President Trump carries all three, that's going to indicate a great night for him. So we're going to get a pretty good indication early what's going on.
And so, looking at some of the polls, I mean, do you trust polls anymore? How do you feel about some of the polls? Some of the polls are showing that.
No, I have joined the
Okay,
Lisa Bell fan club, which, as
right.
you know, uh, disparages polls.
Okay.
And, they're just they're all too close. It's almost like they're afraid. I somehow I know this sounds like a conspiracy, but I think they're almost afraid to take a stand, and they're all saying, "Oh, it's so close, it's so
Mhm.
close," and they're all the same. Somebody's up a point, somebody's down a point, and you just don't have that in polling where everybody is the same.
Right, where everyone is neck and neck. And, we've seen a lot of people turning out for early voting. Does that give us any indication of maybe how things are go? Do you think we can read anything into that or no?
Usually we can. Traditionally, Democrats vote early, Republicans like to vote on election day. This year, we've seen an increase in the number of Republicans voting. So, ordinarily, that would favor Donald Trump. The problem is there are so many issues on the ballots this year. Florida is a perfect example. Are people going to the polls to vote for president, or are they going to the polls to vote on abortion amendments, marijuana amendments? Are they going to vote on judges, on here in the Orange County on three competitive local county commission races? So we really don't know what's driving people to the polls. In past elections, it's always been the top of the ticket. That may or may not be the case this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned those two, the abortion amendment and the recreational marijuana amendment. I went to vote early yesterday, and I want to say it's probably one of the first times that I voted early that there was a line. I probably waited an hour. And so I think, like you said, lots of people are out. Talk a little bit about those amendments and what your thinking is on how those are going to go.
Yeah, it's a tough climb because both amendments, three on marijuana and four on abortion, need 60% of the vote. And so it's hard to get people in Florida to agree on anything up to 60%. However, if you remember correctly, a couple of years ago, the amendment giving felons the right to vote passed overwhelmingly, and nobody thought that would happen. But Governor DeSantis has really put his reputation on the line, campaigning and spending millions of dollars to fight both of these amendments. So this is going to be interesting to see if they can get to 60%.
And, we've heard a lot of people saying, hey, we may not know who wins the presidential election tomorrow night. Do you think by the end of the night, by the time we go to bed tomorrow night, we are going to know how this election has gone? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really do. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it could drag on. The problem is Pennsylvania, which was the problem 4 years ago. They have an obscure law which says that you cannot start counting absentee ballots until the polls close. So, if you remember 4 years ago, that set off the conspiracy rumors because at 8 o'clock at night, Donald Trump was winning Pennsylvania. Then, when they started counting absentee ballots, Biden pulled ahead in the middle of the night. And people are saying, wait a minute, how did that happen? So, if it's really close, Pennsylvania could play an important role in delaying the decision making process.
Okay, so what other big races will you be watching as far as balance of power in Congress and things like that across the country?
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking at the Senate race. Rick Scott, a two-term governor and a one-term senator, is up for reelection. He has always won by very narrow margins. In his two runs for governor, he did not get over 50%. 6 years ago, when he defeated now NASA Administrator Bill Nelson for the Senate, he won by just 10,000 votes out of millions cast. So this year, the Democrats were not able to come up with a particularly strong candidate. Nobody wanted to take him on, but it's going to be interesting to see how he does tomorrow night.
I was you caught me taking a drink of water as we're watching the soothing video of those ballots. We've heard a lot about election security. I know Louis Bolden has talked to all of the election supervisors here in our area, assuring people that the elections are secure. Anything you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think most people have rejected it. The best example of that, I think, is in Lake and Broward County, where both election supervisors were challenged this year and easily won re-election. Alan Hayes, who's a Republican and one of the best election supervisors in the state, has pushed back strongly against these claims of election fraud, and I think that's done a lot of good.
Yeah. All right, Jim, I know you're going to be heading in here with us this afternoon starting around 3:30. Any final words before we see you in person in a few hours?
Well, the question is up to you, actually, Julie. What's
Huh.
the weather going to be like tomorrow? Are we going to have good weather, bad weather? That affects turnout.
It does affect turnout, and I think we're going to be okay for that. We will do a full weather forecast coming up. After we finish with you, if you want to sit glued and watch the screen, you will see a full weather forecast coming up. But that weather does affect it. I mean, it's a huge deal if we have a lot of rain on election day, right?
It absolutely does. People do not want to stand in a long line in the rain. So,
Yeah.
historically, that has been a factor.
Okay. I think we're looking good for that. So, all right,
So,
Jim, you
you
will.
get to determine who wins the election,
Oh
Julie.
my gosh. I think I would change my identity and leave town if that pressure were on me. That would be too much. I can't do it. All right, Dr. Jim Clark, we will see you in a few hours on TV. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
My pleasure, Julie.